On your screen in front of you are census blocks, and I got to time myself here so because I tend to talk a lot. Census blocks, block groups, a census tract, and a VTD or voter tabulation district, a voting district, also called a precinct. A census block, easily put, step outside your home, walk a block up the street, one block, make a right, walk one block, make another right, walk a block, make another right, come right back to where you started, and you've just walked a census block. Now, that census block in New York is going to look a lot different. Say Manhattan would look a lot different than the census block in a rural area in North Carolina. Geography, population density, all of that is different. But that's literally what a block is. The block is the building blocks for mapping, for GIS. That's the lowest level. Inside that block are households, people, the race and ethnicity of people, the ages, average income, mean income, projections on what the population will be for the next 10 years. All of that is inside a census block. That's the lowest level of geography. When you go a few miles out, maybe not even a few miles, maybe half a mile, you'll pick up more blocks surrounding that block that you live in. That is a block group. That block group is going to have a bit more people because it's a collection of about 3 or 4 census blocks. That's a block group. It got a little bigger than the blocks. From there is a much larger section of people called a census tract. As long as you stay within the same county, you have picked up blocks and block groups along a narrow rectangular, in most instances, a rectangular shape. That's a census tract. The average census tract is about 4,000 people. So you see we've expanded, but we've stayed a little inside that. We've stayed inside that county. Now, precincts, voting districts, you all know that. You know where you vote. That's the precinct, and everybody that lives in your precinct votes for the same candidates. So, census blocks, block groups, census tract, and VTDs are precincts. Those are building blocks because when we go to the application later, you're going to see block groups and precincts. That's just the way the particular application that we use, that's the geography that they have on their site. So see, that's simple because I want you to know these little squares and shapes that you will be clicking on while you are mapping. So that's geography. And when we get past geography, I got to talk a little bit about something you've already probably discussed, and that's redistricting principles. Most states have about 6 or 7 that are always the same. And I'm going to go over them briefly, but I'll talk about them more when we are actually mapping. One person, one vote means every district should have almost equal the same number of people. Congressional districts tend to have the exact same number of people, but only off by 1 or 2 people. When we get to all other levels of districts, whether it's state house or state senate, or your local redistricting plans, you can vary a little bit. So one district can, say a state house or school board, one district can have up to 5% more or less than a neighboring district, but that's the cutoff, 5%. So that's important. Congressional districts, practically equal. All other districts can vary 5% or more between districts. Compactness refers to the shape of the district, and I'll discuss that a little bit later because I'll show you things that, in my opinion, aren't very compact. Contiguity, all parts of the district have to touch, unless there are areas in North Carolina that have islands that are a little bit away from the mainland. That water doesn't violate the contiguity rule. So in North Carolina, I could see water separating some areas, but that'll be okay. Aside from that, we want all parts to touch. The Voting Rights Act. The Lawyers Committee and groups we work with operate under a racial equity lens. We place the Voting Rights Act square center in these redistricting principles because we are not going to advocate or support any plan that weakens minority voting strength. So if a plan is drawn that's putting too many minorities in one district to keep them from being influential in other districts, that's a problem. That's a voting rights problem. If a plan is drawn where there's a concentration of minority voters, enough for those minority voters to elect a candidate of choice in a district, but the state or the local lawmaking body comes along and chops that minority group up and spreads it across other districts, keeping it at minimal numbers, that's a problem. So we are addressing the Voting Rights Act, and we are working to ensure that North Carolina and the jurisdictions in North Carolina don't violate the Voting Rights Act. Because after that, we'll have to discuss possible litigation. And there are some other things, communities of interest. I'll talk to you a little bit about that. I'll bet you can drive around your community and you can say, oh, I know this particular groups of people live here. And across town, particular groups of people that work near a certain plant or a certain industry, they live in that area of the city. You already know what communities of interest are. They are groups of people that have a geographic similar area where they live and they share something. And together, if they're in the same district, they can have a meaningful effect on the lawmaker and the policy. So think of communities of interest, farmers, and agriculture is their shared interest. You can think of religious groups that sort of live in a homogeneous community. That doesn't have to be 100%, but they all share a same religious belief or worship in the same manner. All of these are communities of interest. A college campus, we already know, and the community surrounding a college campus is a community of interest. They have academia, things of interest to people who live around these colleges and may take classes or certainly appreciate the presentations and speakers. Communities of interest, broad in range, but we don't define it. You do. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. So those are redistricting principles. And what we do is I want to explain one in particular. I told you about population equality. And I told you congressional districts have to pretty much have the same population, but other districts don't. And if you note my example in front of you, let's say we live in a city that only has 100 people. And y'all know I'm making this up. And in this city, we have to draw 5 districts. In order for every district to be exactly the same, every district would have 20 people in it because 20 times 5 is 100. That would be the ideal district size, IDS, for each district, 20. But what if we don't draw it that way? We draw District 1 with 20 people, that's perfect deviation. Those zeros is perfect deviation. But District 2 has 5 extra people over that 20 ideal district size. We multiply that by the ideal district size, that 5 by the ideal district size, and you get they are 0.25% over. That's too high. Remember, I said the difference between districts has to be 5%, not 25%. And you see the differences in District 3, District 4, District 5. So the way we calculate something called deviation, we take the district with the most people, that would be District 2, add that deviation percentage to the district with the least people, that would be District 5. Forget the pluses and minuses, just drop that, add them, and you'll see that if this plan were drawn, this plan would violate the deviation principle because it's 50%. Remember what I said, for everything other than congressional plans, the deviation cannot be greater than 5%, which means if your most populated district is 5% and your least populated district is 5%, and that's the maximum, your plan cannot be over 10%. This one is 50%. So that's sort of a quick about districting. It'll make more sense when I show you, and I will do that. But I wanted to put that out there because when you start drawing, you're going to look and go, oh, I see what Fred was talking about. All right. I talked to you about compactness. This is about shapes. These are actual districts you're looking at in front of you. They weren't drawn in North Carolina. At least I don't think I pulled this from North Carolina. But when districts are drawn like this, a demographer like myself, and like you all will be soon, would look at these funny, look at that little thin line up there, and look at just the shape of some of these monstrous looking creatures. You will ask yourself, why did they do that? For example, who lives in, if you see my cursor, who lives here? And why were they excluded? Is that water? Is that why the district isn't drawn down there? Is there water in here? Or was this drawn such that certain groups of people could be excluded or included in that plan? See, it's plans like this that make me pull up my screen and start to see who these people that were left out, who they were, and I can infer as to why they were left out. The most compact figure is a circle. We're not going to draw circles. We like nice squares, nice rectangles, but depending on the geography and depending on all of those principles that I just showed you, things don't come out as pretty, but we shouldn't have districts that look this strange. And again, if they look this strange, you have to ask yourself why and start investigating who these people were that were excluded. I would bet you're going to come across some interesting findings if you do that. That's compactness, and you'll see it again here. Contiguity, remember we said all parts touching, but if this is water down here, it's going to be okay. A court isn't going to have a problem with that. We discussed the Voting Rights Act, so I won't go over that again. And in many states, they ask when you're drawing like statewide plans, like a congressional plan, try to keep counties whole. Because you know, if you can, that certainly makes for a cleaner map. But you all know like Charlotte area, maybe the Raleigh-Durham area, those counties, you might not, it might be too many people and you'll go over the deviation. But in some areas of the state, more rural areas, you can keep those areas. You can keep counties intact as because there are less people in rural areas, you just pick up larger, you pick up, your district is larger because you've picked up more people. So those are precinct and county lines. I've explained communities of interest. Remember, farmers, students, if there's an area in your city where all the athletes live, all the celebrities live, that's a community of interest. Communities that share a language other than English, that's a community of interest. So you're incorporating all of these standards when you are mapping. So having said that, I'm gonna now share my screen again, and we're gonna go to this mapping tool. This is called Districtor. It's district with an R at the end. And if you want to play along with me here, you can just Google Districtor, districtr.org. That's districtor.org. And when you come to the main screen, you should have something like this. At the top, how to use, this is information. that I'm hoping that I put in the exercise. Everyone reads, just to kind of get more information. There's a manual here because you're probably not going to remember everything that I'm saying. But I think when we start to draw, you'll see it. And when you go to the app, it'll make more sense if you're not following along with me now. So I'll give everybody a few seconds, those that want to do it, to go to districtor.org. And you should pull up that MGGG up at the top. That's the name of the organization that developed this app. It's free, it's downloadable, won't cost you a thing. I wouldn't do that to you, okay? And you don't have to reveal any personal information. So easy app. Now, if you come to this, you'll see this little marker up here. You draw the lines. That is what this is about. This is about teaching everyday voters how to play a part in the redistricting process by learning about mapping and then hopefully working with a group like North Carolina Black Alliance and bringing them a map and saying, hey, this is what I drew. What do you all think? What do you all think? And I've mapped out my community. I've talked to other people in other communities, and this is what I think is a fair plan. That's how I'm hoping we proceed with this. Now, when you're at this page, drop down until you get to this map. Where would you like to start? We're in North Carolina, and not every state here yet has the material ready for mapping, but North Carolina was one of the very first states that MGGG did this work on. It's been up for about 2 years now. So why don't we click on North Carolina, and you're going to get here. Draw a plan from scratch. We can draw districts. Remember what I told you earlier? We can draw districts or we can draw communities. We're going to draw a district. We're going to do a congressional plan. And you see here, if you want to stick with districts, they can show you, you can draw 14 congressional districts, because remember, you all just gained a seat. You can draw the 13 if you like, or you can jump to the Senate and the House seats. These sites aren't ready for local redistricting yet. They're not ready there, but don't worry, we can provide that for you because my program is a lot different than this one. So I can engage in redistricting anywhere. So don't worry if you're just concerned about school districts and what have you. We have a process for that. Here, we're just going to concentrate on this. This is the drawing districts. Now remember, I said if you want to draw communities, you get to go into the map and draw your community. And I'll demonstrate that to you a little bit later too. So why don't we start with drawing districts? We're going to stick with statewide, and we're going to draw 14 congressional districts. So all you got to do is click on here. And your beautiful state has popped up here, but you'll notice, I got to move my cursor though, because I'm going to need some information over there. So if you notice, you've got the state up, you can play around to the left to make it a little bigger or downsize it a little bit. You can still do that, not a problem, okay? That's not a problem. Now, remember, we decided we were going to draw 14 districts. You can draw all 14, or you can key into where you live and just draw your district. Now, one thing I don't want you to do, don't go pull up the last 13 districts and then try to draw 13 just like that. You're going to take up all the space. Remember, you have an additional district. So if you look at the current districts, there are only 13. You go in and draw those plans exactly like they look now, you're not going to have room for a 14th district. So we need to kind of start from scratch, but you can always use the current plan as a model, as a guide. Now I'm going to do something very simple here to get past this so you'll see what I'm doing. Remember I said 14 districts. I am going to, first of all, that little hand there, just move it back and forth. You know, do it to your liking. Click the paintbrush when you click the paintbrush, 14 different colors show up. Each color represents a district. What you do then, I want to start with District 1. I click on that first one, and then I start to draw. How about I go into the northeast section? And all of these little blocks and those little blocks you see are precincts. Remember, those are voter tabulation districts. They are voting precincts. You are picking up precincts as you color. We'll call it coloring now. As you color, look down here. You are picking up population. You see it rising? Now, whatever my ideal district size is for North Carolina, it is going to be your entire population, everybody that lives in North Carolina, divided by 14. That's going to make for your ideal district size, which I don't think this one has already told you, but oh, there it is down there. Your ideal district size is 106 people. That is your ideal district size. Only have 215,341. So what do I have to do? I gotta do some more coloring. And if you pick up too much, change your brush size. See this right here? If I extend it, this brush is picking up a lot of territory. If I decrease it, because I want to hone in on some areas, then I'm picking up less. Now, you know your state far better than I do, even though I lived there for a while, a few years back. You know your state better than I do. So you'll know, based on what you know about the state, does it make sense for me to take the Northeastern District and run it across the north portions of the state? Does that make sense? See, I'm just doing this. I call it a blind draw. I'm just doing this because I don't know anything about North Carolina. Because when I get through with these districts, I'm going to hand it to Reggie or somebody in North Carolina or you and say, hey, look at this map and tell me what you think. Scratch it up, do whatever you want. If you notice, I have over 1 million people here already. That's too many people. Remember, I need 681. So I can use this eraser and get rid of some areas, just like that. And hopefully get down to what do I need? 681,000? I took too many. Now I need to add some more, use my paintbrush and add a little bit more. And look at me, 681,857, not bad. I'm over. Remember, congressional districts have to be what? They have to be perfect. But it's going to be hard on these programs. It's going to be hard. But look at what I did. If I am through with this district and I'm satisfied with 681,857 people, I am going to lock it. Why? Because when I get ready to start District 2, I don't want to mess District 1 up. So you see me going all in one, but I'm not messing it up. So make sure you lock your districts. And now I'm already starting on District 2. Now notice something. Part of District 1 is over here. I'm going to have non-contiguous districts. What if my 2 is doing this? And look, I've got part of District 1 stuck in my 2. I violated the contiguity rule. So what does Fred need to do? Erase this. Go in here, get that out of there. Get that out of there. And then go back to working on District 2, because District 2 only has 389,000 people. So let me go in and see if I can get that up to 680. Uh-oh, there we go. Wait. I got 693. So how about erasing some? I'll erase a little bit. I'm erasing too much. But you get where I'm going here. I can leave it there and come back and tweak it later. What next? District 3. I want to hang out over here. So I'm going to go to the western portion of the state. Remember what I said about more rural areas? It's taking a lot more people to get to my ideal district size, isn't it? In the rural areas, it's counting for a lot more geography here. Now, what do you think will happen when I get in? I'm on district, I've drawn 3. Here's my 4th one. What is going to happen when I get into the Charlotte area? I know that county by itself is going to be too large. I am at 814 already, and I don't even have all of Charlotte, do I? So I know I've got to do some configuring. So what you're going to do here is keep going till you get all 14 just the way you like them. You're going to be erasing a lot. You're going to be cursing a lot. You're going to be doing a lot. And it starts fun, but it gets kind of mind-boggling when you start to talk to groups and they say, oh no, this isn't going to work. These individuals over here, these communities over here can't stand these people, and you've got them in the same district. So you'll be dealing with a lot of dynamics, or you'll be in a room looking at a map going, no, that's not going to work. But the idea here is to draw these 14 districts, get 14 districts together, then we can evaluate them. It's important to know these districts. Remember I said we're putting the Voting Rights Act front and center, right? Population by race. How about voting age population? Let me look at these districts. That first district I drew up here, this blue district, 50% white, 43% Black, 3.4% Hispanic. Now, what if I looked at the 2010 plan and District 1 was 53% Black? Then I'm way off, and Black residents in the Northeast up here are going to be like, wait a minute, our district was a majority minority district 10 years ago. Can it still be a majority minority district 10 years later? I've got to go back in with my tool and see how this can change. Well, I just messed up there, but I would have to go in and really reconfigure, and that all of this is going to change as you are doing it. This is important because remember, we are placing a racial equity lens front center into this. So I don't want you to think you just go in here and just start, coloring like you're back in the first grade. No, it's a lot more complicated than that, because we are talking about groups of people who want to be in the same districts because they have shared interests. We are also talking about drawing plans that don't benefit people because of their partisan affiliation. So what Fred is not doing, he's not going to go to the evaluation tab and pull up how many people, how this district would have fared if it were based on the 2016 presidential election. This program can show you if your results are, if your districts lean Democrat or Republican. But the Lawyers Committee is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. We're not drawing for Democrats, we're not drawing for Republicans. We are drawing for voters. We're drawing for people. So when you're looking at this, you can make it a point to go down and look at race. You can also look at partisan affiliate, partisan balance right there, and you can see if the districts you've drawn are more Democratic leaning or more Republican leaning. I suggest not doing that.
Hey, I'm gone.
Sorry. I suggest not doing that.
Yeah.
I suggest not doing that because in the event you do, you're doing what we're hoping lawmakers don't do. Draw districts to benefit parties. So I showed you that feature, but I'm hoping you don't use it. Now, we've got the mapping. I want to show you one more thing before I get quiet here and draw communities. Let's do the same thing. We're going to draw a community. We're going to identify it. There is North Carolina again. So let me zoom in. I'm more familiar with the Raleigh area since I lived in Cary a long time ago. So having done that, if I wanted to identify the community that I lived in, then I would click my paint button and I was in Cary, so there's Cary. Now, when you go in, you'll see streets and such and place markers for like places and townships. So if I wanted to do that here, I want to decrease my paintbrush because I want to pick up smaller areas. I remember where I lived. I remember the community. Let's say that was my community right there. Then I'm done. I go in and I start typing, naming, describing that community. All of these features come with the ability to save. And when you save it, you're going to get an identifying number. Write that number down, tag it somewhere, because you can always pull this up and it'll take you right back to your map. Or you can email somebody this link and they can pull up your map. You can email me your link and I can pull up your map and tell you some things about it. So you can share with one another. So it's a unique feature. It's not a perfect feature because remember, as I said, it's going to be harder to get these deviations because this is using precincts. I use census blocks. These programs aren't designed for you to pick up census blocks. But whatever you draw, I can import it into my program and we can tweak some of those edges and we can get that deviation to exactly where you want it to be. Now, we timed this for about 45 minutes. I know it was quick, and I'm a true Southerner. I talk fast, but I'm hoping we can take about, before you all go to break, I think your break is at 7:30. If we can entertain, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and I'd love to entertain any questions that anyone has. You may have written some in the chat, but as you know, I haven't been able to look at the chat. But Reggie, we can move to questions now before going into the breakout sessions.
Thank you so much, Fred. So everyone, we're actually a smaller enough group tonight that I think we're going to remain interplanetary, and we'll just kind of keep this as an open Q&A. So first, we do have a couple leading questions, but we do want to, if there are questions that have come up for you all as participants, we want to open to that first. And so feel free to unmute yourself and just ask open questions of Fred.
This is Otis Jordan. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, my question is, this is very good. It's really great. This is the first time I've seen something that seemed to work so well. And what I was wondering is that information you gave earlier about contacting you and downloading this map thing. How do we get that? Can that be emailed to us so that, because I know when you were telling me it was hard to get the correct information.
Okay, so are you asking is some of what I discussed tonight, the presentation, will it be available for you to access? Is that your question?
No, it's actually not the information tonight, but to be able to pull up that website or that map.
Oh, the exercise.
Right.
Yeah. I'll hand that part to Reggie, but North Carolina Black Alliance has the exercise. It's a step-by-step. So everything I did, it's in a one-page format telling you how to go through each step. So Reggie will probably provide that information as to how members here can get it, but it is a one-pager. And Reggie, I don't know if you want to chime in on that part now, because I don't know exactly how North Carolina Black Alliance wants to
Yep.
do that part.
Yeah, I'll say a few words. So as always, any of you who are on this call tonight, you had to register to be on this call. So we have your contact information. We will, following this presentation, send every available resource from this presentation to you, which is going to include both the link to the website, and I'm also going to put that in the chat right now. But so it'll include that and the one pager that Fred is talking about right now, just kind of with the step-by-step guide. We'll send that to you as well. We'll also put that on the website. So again, if you've been with us, this is now the last session of our 4-part series. If you've been with us this whole time, on our website, we have every resource from every session available on that website as well.
Okay, so that interactive map will be able to be gotten from the website.
Yeah, it'll be on the website, and then you in particular, because you're on this call, you'll also receive a direct email with those links. Yep.
Thank you.
And those exact instructions, the link to Districtor, and then getting to the screen and getting to that map, all of that is step-by-step instructions in that one pager. And there's also a PowerPoint that you can refer to with those principles I was talking about, equal population and all of that. That's all, that'll be included in what you all will receive as well.
Great.
Hello?
Yes, yes.
Hi, this is Johnny. I have a question. I am assuming that the data that is available to us to use this tool is only good as what is even collected from the outset. So I'm assuming also that the population numbers are most likely undercounted, especially among vulnerable populations, that they're not really getting an accurate count of the populations across the 100 counties. So how good is this tool if we already know we're dealing with probably targeted and strategic undercounts?
There we go. Okay, and that's an excellent question. I don't work for the Census Bureau, but I'm going to sound like them in a minute. I am on these subcommittees that work with the census and advise the census, or attempt to advise the census in establishing the most accurate count. So what you say about the undercounted population and all, that's exactly true. We won't know all of the metrics involved and what took place last year with the count and exactly what unfolded. All of that information will be forthcoming. There are metrics scheduled to be released mid-September. Then there'll be others released late fall. There'll be more metrics released next year. The best answer I can tell you is, first of all, when you download this program, it's based off 2010 census geography. That's stale geography. But remember, we're using this as a practice. It's just a model to practice and play with districts. It's important because when we receive the census data, it's scheduled to be released by September 30th. There will be data given to states August 16th. But the states are going to have to take that redistricting data and put it in a format before they can turn it into the data needed to draw maps. Most states are saying they only need 7 to 10 days, which would be August 20 something. And when they post that, hopefully they'll have it on their site. Districter, the site that I'm recommending you all use, and there are others, but Districter, the site that I'm recommending that you use, right now it has the 2010 census data. As soon as they get the 2020 census data, they are going to put it up there. Now, I have not seriously or to your satisfaction answered your question about the undercount. We are going, again, we are working with the Census Bureau to ensure the most accurate numbers. When that is released, I cannot say what states or jurisdictions may launch lawsuits. Everybody is suing now. I can't say who may launch a lawsuit saying that the census got it wrong, these aren't their numbers. I can't speak to that. What I can speak to is what they put out. That's what we're going to have to use, at least for now. What they put out, when that 2020, those 2020 numbers come on that site, that's what Fred is going to have to use to draw. That is until further notice. That is, I'm not trying to shirk from answering your question. It's a great question, but it oftentimes comes down to when the government puts this out and there are no arguments around it other than some gripes, then that's what judges and lawsuits are going to go with. That's what we're thinking. Again, I cannot presume exactly what the courts will do or what states will do with this information. But when you get the 2020 numbers, that's what we're going to have to work with. And I know you can drive around some areas in your community and go, I know it's more people in this census block than that. We understand that. We are just encouraging the census to be as accurate as they can because they have to balance confidentiality and accuracy. Those are the two they have to balance. We've been meeting with them for over 2 years now. Hopefully they get it right. That's the best answer. And I'm sorry I can't answer more directly.
Hey, Fred, I think related to this, and I think you answered it, but just in case people missed it. So, because I think this question was a little bit more about this particular tool. You're walking us through Districter, and so to your point, whenever the kind of final and most accurate census data comes in August, sometimes in August and September, is it likely that this particular tool is going to be updated with that data?
It will be.
Right now, we're working still with, yeah.
Yeah, it absolutely will be.
And that's what I'm asking. So I think that was, okay.
Could I comment on that for the lady that was asking that question? I think what I would think about is you have to work with what you have, just like when the voting time comes. There are so many people who don't vote, and we really can't do anything about them. We can only do about what we have, what the people who do vote. So this is the same processes that we can only deal with the people who are counted and that data we have to work with. So if we focus on getting that data and trying to prevent gerrymandering and get equitable districts so that the voting is fair, I think we can get politicians elected that can then next time there's a census that will make sure that everyone is counted, as opposed to the previous administration trying to leave out as many people as they could. So that's a fight that we have to take for the long run. But for the short run, we have to work with what we have and use that to try and prevent this gerrymandering that caused these situations in the first place.
And that's an excellent response. Far better than mine.
Thank you for that response, Mr. Jordan. The next question is from Frankie Denise Powell.
Hey, Mr. Jordan, thank you for this. Wow. So I put a question in the chat, which is what I'm gonna ask now. So that coloring of those 14 areas, doing the math and then coloring them seems so easy. So then what is gonna make the granular, like within whatever 14 that we come up with, what are some of the things that are gonna make that hard? I was told in another one, another kind of session like this, using a different kind of tool, that you start maybe with your community and map from the smaller to the larger. Either way, since this 14 is so easy, then where's the fuss gonna be within those 14?
And that's another great question. I will say what I was doing looked easy.
Yeah.
It was. I
It
was
was.
just coloring. I was in the first grade coloring.
Yes.
But when I draw a plan, I don't draw it that way. I've got stacks of information like this from voters telling me you can't split this community up. You can't do this to this area of this city. So I've got all of that in my head looking while I'm drawing. I didn't do it then. But we've gone out and talked to voters like yourself and what we know about areas. What's going to make it hard is, I promise you, by the time you get to District 7 and 8 and you start playing with those deviations, you will be sick of this program. And when you get finished and hand it off to somebody and they take your map, because this has happened to me 1,000 times, they take your map and they take that marker and they go, nope, you got to move this over here. We don't like those people. I've actually been told. It was a racial incident in South Florida, and I had the two communities of interest in the same group. They were like, no, we don't even walk on that side of our community. So you've got, Fred, you got to move that line. And when you start doing that, your deviations start to change. Your numbers start to change. And I promise you, a congressional plan like North Carolina, by the time that, luckily we have another social scientist in our office that'll be drawing plans. I don't have to do it. I get to come and talk to y'all. But he will spend hundreds of hours on this, just trying to get it right. And then looking at, you'll be surprised. You'll get a call from an elected representative going, what did you do to my district? Then I'm like, okay, I'm not drawing for you, but let me go in here and see what he's talking about or see what she's talking about. She didn't like that I put I sent her district someplace in the county she didn't like. And then you're trying to accommodate and you're not going to make everybody happy. It gets very, very complicated. So I made it look fun, but trust me, by the time you're on your 5th, 6th district, y'all will be cursing me out, I'm sure.
No, I won't. I'll send you a bottle of wine. But what I can see, that works. But it was that theoretically and by the math, there are 14 districts. That's the easy part. But then getting down in the granular, in the weeds with who doesn't like who, and that kind of, I just wanted to anticipate what that kind of looks like, getting really down to the practical, how people deal, like you said, who don't like who. I got it.
Exactly right. And when you think of like the Charlotte area, I just played in there. There's no telling how bad what I drew in Charlotte is. I didn't pay any attention. And then the Raleigh, Durham, all of that, it's just very different. And it gets, because you're talking about people organizing themselves such that they can affect public policy, and it's about them. So I'm trying to make all of these groups happy. And I know I can't make everybody happy. So, but thank you. That's a great question.
No, thank you. Thank you for understanding and answering.
Thank you for that question, Dr. Powell. And again, I'm just going to remind everyone on this call, if you, especially if you've been with us for the long haul, we as the Alliance and with these trainings, we are concerned about the congressional. We're also concerned about the state legislative, and our emphasis has been the county and municipal as well. So it gets even more granular than you're talking about right now. And so that's a perfect question for where we're headed. So thank you all for that conversation. Our next question is from Amanda Williams.
Good evening. My question is, you showed us an example where you just started coloring. And then you talked about like the different features, where you look at race, you look at party and that kind of thing. So what exactly are you using other than information from, community members to draw a congressional district or to draw a district? Are you using census tracts? Because I would think some of that information might be used because you're trying to balance out a district. Is it going to be heavily minority? Is it going to be heavily Republican? Is it going to be, made up of some special interest? What exactly are you using to draw a district?
I use a number of those geographies. The census blocks, the block groups, precincts. For a congressional plan, I'll use a lot of precincts so that I don't end up splitting a precinct, and census tracts. But that's a congressional plan, and that in North Carolina, that seat was what, 681,000 people. So the census tract has they average about 4,000 people. Sometimes I'll go in and click the entire county. So I'll keep as many counties, whole counties, together in a congressional district. So it depends on what I'm drawing. So for a congressional plan, using counties, using census tracts, I'll do that. But remember, my first draft is just that, a draft based on all the information that I know. I got to give it to you and let you look at that map and tell me things about some of those districts that you don't agree, or asking me if I can change it. Now, if I'm drawing a school district, I will likely not use census tracts. It's too many people. And that 4,000 is going to send my numbers way, it's going to send them everywhere. And I won't be within that 5% of each district. So I'll probably use blocks, block groups, make that brush a little bigger, swath a bit more people, but it's going to depend on what I'm drawing. It's going to be a first draft, and then it has to be given to you to sign off on. That's how we work. That's not how every demographer works. If I worked for a party, my main concern, and remember this, I said this, if I worked for a party, my concern would be to maximize my party, which would mean I would be looking at that Republican Democrat on the bottom and drawing districts to maximize whatever party I was drawing for. But we're nonpartisan. So I don't pay attention to that. I use what I told you, that census geography and the Voting Rights Act. Because in North Carolina, what we do is a lot of work before I go to that mapping table. What I would do is find out where the growth is in North Carolina, and you all have gained in population because you gained a seat. I'm going to look at the majority minority districts that were in place in 2010 and try to keep them in place. So if you all had a district that was 55% Black voters, I want to make sure that district is still 55% Black voters. That's the Voting Rights Act. That's my adherence to the Voting Rights Act. I, of course, want to maintain equal population. So I might have to move people places they don't want to be because I'm trying to stay within that 5% if it's something other than congressional. But remember, those congressional plans have to be perfect or near perfect. So I've got to do some things that I may not like, but initially it's going to start with a draft. And then you're going to look at that draft and send me a page of revisions that I'm going to be up all night trying to change or see what I can change. And something else we do, we look for unity mapping opportunities. Say there's an area in North Carolina where there is 25% Hispanic voters, 27% Black voters, 10% Asian voters. Those three race and ethnic groups can combine possibly and create an opportunity district at 47, 48%, and know that they can elect a candidate of choice if they all vote together. We are looking for opportunities like that. So all of that is going into it. And I told you, I've got information like this before I start going in there and coloring. We've done the analysis, we've done the work. Now, you may not have. That's why some groups that I'm working with, they're not interested in drawing the entire plan. They just want to draw that congressional district where they live because they know that area. Or they just want to draw that school board in the city where they live because they know their city. So a lot of it is going to be dependent on who I'm drawing for and who has to look at this when I'm done. So the Lawyers Committee will never draw a plan for the state of North Carolina and come to your hearing and present it, because that would be the Lawyers Committee acting on its own without information and input from you. So what we do is that first draft, submit it to North Carolina Black Alliance because we're partnering with them. They sit down with you and you all are looking at that plan and tell Fred he got to get that mess out of here. You know, I've been told that before too. So these things happen, but you initially sign off on it. That's the thing. And it can be, I've been in situations where I've drawn 100 plans. You know, it can just be that way until we get something that the majority is comfortable with. So that's the goal.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question, and thank you for that response, Fred. And again, I'm just going to remind everyone on the call again, especially if you've been with us for the long haul. You know, we have emphasized as an organization the focus on county and municipal redistricting. So, one thing, and Fred, I think you hinted at it in your response, but again, think about that principle that Fred raised around communities of interest. Especially at that county and local level. That's very important. So one thing I'm also going to just encourage, we've got about 10 more minutes on the call. One thing I'm going to encourage you all to just think about is, especially locally, as you think about how you would kind of define and what features and characteristics define a community of interest for you where you are. Think about that as well, because that's going to go into that process as well, in addition to the census data, in addition to kind of everything that Fred has kind of walked us through today, at the local level, especially that kind of conversation about how you keep a particular community or multiple communities together. It's going to be very important. So our next question is from Michael Jackson, and then followed by Jennifer Albright. And then we've also got some folks who posted in the chat, and I'll read those after these questions have been asked. So Michael Jackson.
Talked about how to use this tool. And my question is, are you saying that local citizens can do something like this and present it and advocate for change? Because most of the time as a voter or a person who's registered voters, the state legislature makes a decision, and there's no, to my knowledge, I didn't realize regular citizens could actually participate in this. But usually once a decision is made upon the redistricting, there are these lawsuits that happen that are always in the public news. and it's more reactive in nature. So I'm wondering if you're telling us something which can enable us to be proactive in this area.
Yes, and that's a great question. This is a very proactive measure because when we attend these hearings and you get up and you talk about your community, your district, the principles involved with drawing, directing the North Carolina legislature or the local body in your city to pay attention to the Voting Rights Act, to pay attention to equal population, to pay attention to communities of interest, all of that becomes part of the permanent record. So in the event of redistricting lawsuits that could come in the future over any plan, if we've got citizens who have provided testimony discussing the Voting Rights Act, discussing that this will be the first redistricting since 1965 that doesn't have Section 5, where certain places in North Carolina had to get approval before they made a voting change, and every other place in the South did. This will be the first time. So when you are testifying and you are submitting that written testimony, when we sue, in the event we sue, one of the first things the judges do is ask, okay, so you all are suing the state over, or the city over their violations of the alleged violations of the Voting Rights Act. Did any Black people come to the hearings? They actually asked these questions. Do you have testimony from the people affected? If you don't have testimony, how are they harmed? And so all of that is part of the record that is so vitally important in the event of a lawsuit, so we can address the opposition and we can address the judge with testimony, with information talking about, you did not have to do a district this way. We submitted a plan where we kept North Carolina A&T in one district. We showed them that plan and they went and split it. We need that to help make our case.
So the next question, in terms of hands raised, is from Jennifer Albright, and then I've got a few more questions from the chat, and then we'll close our conversation. So Jennifer, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah. Hey, Reggie, I think you answered my question about when I'm sitting down and actually drawing something out. I really want to focus on it. I happen to live in Durham. I know Durham. I've been here a long time. I'm going to really hone in on that. I really love this, and I'm wondering if this program or any other programs that you're working with have an overlay that give the current districting, so that if we were to draw districts, we would actually see the current one on top of it, and we could work with that in mind. You know how you can do that with paintbrush and stuff like that?
That's great. Look, you sound like a demographer already. My program, I'll start calling out demographers. My program does that, but my program costs $10,000. It's not free. It's not free. Yours doesn't. What you could do is get the actual map, and you got to look at it and draw.
Look back and forth, right?
But unfortunately, it doesn't lay it over there. But we have a partnership with MGGG. I'm going to offer that to them.
Because that seems like it would
Jennifer.
be so logical to sit there and look at the existing situation and mush it around.
That's great. And look, that's what I do. That's what I do. Now, what's interesting, though, is we would hone in on where the growth in North Carolina is, because that's a good indicator of where that new district is going to be. So,
okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That's great about that overlay. I told you, y'all already sound like demographers.
Jennifer, does Office Depot or Kinko's make old-fashioned overheads like we used to have on the overhead projector?
Well, I was thinking about that. So you had a clear plastic thing with the old districts on it, and you could even just put it up again, hang it up on your screen over top of this program.
I'm right there with you. If Kinko's and Office Depot can figure it out, I'm
Well,
right
I
there.
need to find out where I can get a copy of the existing districts, and then I can make a photograph of it and then print it onto a clear plastic.
Well, if you want to do the congressional, state house, and state senate, go to the North Carolina General Assembly website.
Okay,
You should be able to find the plan there.
okay,
I think I remember seeing it up there. Now, the school districts, city councils, county commissions, a lot of local areas don't have all of this on their local websites. You sometimes have to go get a paper copy. We always have to do that.
okay.
And then I have to draw it from hand.
Where do you get the paper copy from? You mean from the local government, from the?
Yeah, because a lot of them don't have it. A lot of them don't have it. And if you find more rural counties, they're not going to have a website that has that GIS applications on it.
Mhm.
But you can go, they might charge $5 or something, but you can go get a printed copy. And I've often had to get a printed copy and recreate it on my program.
Thank you all. So we've got just a couple more minutes left, and then I just want to give some kind of follow-up information. But I'm going to ask it. I think you all literally just answered this question, but just in case there's anything else that you need to elaborate on, or if Attorney Thompson would just like a little bit more clarification. But Attorney Thompson asked the question, can Fred discuss using map overlay tools in drawing and comparing redistricting map layers? Are they helpful? And I think that's literally the conversation you just had. So Attorney Thompson, does that answer your question? And Fred, is there anything else you feel you need to say about that?
I think we pretty much touched on it. I know, tell you what, when you're in Districtor, that first screen before you go to the mapping screen, see if they already have, a lot of states, they already have that current plan up there, and you might be able to right click and copy it.
Okay.
We have it up there, but I am going to, I think her name was Jennifer. I am going to take Jennifer's suggestion and offer it to the professor at Tufts University. They're the ones that developed this, to see if they can put that up there such that you can use that in your drawing. And that's a great exercise right there. I also want to say that since our partnership with North Carolina Black Alliance is mostly for local redistricting, it is. I still want you to go in Districtor. You can play with the state and congressional, because if you can draw a congressional, state house, or state senate, you can draw a local plan. You just can't do it on that program. But they could be making it more accessible in the future. And I'm talking to them about putting more counties up. But one thing you can do right now, you can go and use the community feature and go draw your communities. So that way we can collect this, give it to another one of our demographer. So when we're working on a North Carolina local plan, depending on where we're going, we'll know where these communities that you've defined are and try to keep them together. Don't worry, we already know not to split A&T and Central and everybody else. We got you on that. But there are more, neighborhood communities that I'm not familiar with. I know Durham, I know Durham area, but there are more neighborhood communities I'm not familiar with, and it will really help us if you all go in and define them. And we can use that for our local redistricting measures.
May I ask the question?
You may. Yes, and this will be the final question. Yep.
Okay, I'm in Eastern North Carolina, and they have a habit of separating Blacks from whites and that sort of thing, and adding the college students in there. What I want to say to you is that in the last election, all of a sudden, a school board district changed by at least 5% or more. And it went into an area beyond what people were used to seeing. So if you have, as an elected official with the planning department, they will make that 5% change and say that they needed it, and they did not have to do it. So they changed the school board district and went into an area where the people did not know, and it wasn't schools in that area that the person was running for. So we have to be careful about that. And how do you correct that? Because if you there's nothing you can do because they changed it before the election. And then you're voting on people who you didn't know was in that district.
That's a great question. I'm glad you brought that up because that's something we need to keep in mind this time around. What could have happened if they went over 5% and if it affected, say, minority populations in the district? We can possibly go. I'm not an attorney, but I can tell you how they think. We can look at the Voting Rights Act. We can look at equal population. If a lawsuit was brought, which one wasn't, but if a lawsuit was brought, then the county or that area would have to show why. They would have to convince a judge that they had to go over 5%. And that's where we might have been able to stop to stuff them up. So why don't we going forward pay attention to that area? And someone put in the chat that all of the shape files are available. That is great news to know. The shape files are files that we have of the existing districts. I can put that in my computer and see exactly what was adopted and passed and use that information going forward in discussing what we don't want to see happen this time around. And sometimes those shape files are hard to find. So I'm glad to hear that. And if someone, it's the one who posted that message, if you could tell me where I can find them, that's excellent, because we can find all the school districts, the city councils, we can find all of these plans, and I can look and see exactly what happened with that district that you're talking about. So that would be good. That's a good exercise for me to pay attention and see what happened there and see how we can prevent it going forward.
Thank you all, and especially thank you to Fred today for your time today as well. But all of you who have joined us today, and especially I don't remember all the names, but those of you who have been with us from the very beginning, with the first day of the series, we thank you. So this is the final session of our Code Red series. And just based on some of the questions, I really appreciated a lot of the questions today. And again, the whole purpose of this series and session has been to give you, as the public, the tools to impact the process of redistricting, especially at that county and local level. But so we are grateful for your willingness to be here. Over the course of this session, we have, through registrants and just people who've actually participated, we've reached over 800 folks. Not all of those folks have been on the call every time, but through the resources and just kind of the access, we have reached about 800 folks across the state. If we have 800 people across the state who are ready and equipped to be advocates for redistricting, that is power. That is power, because you all are now equipped, and you have people in your communities and lives that you can now help to inform as well. And so we are just grateful for your time here. As always, if you've been on these calls, all of the resources from this call will be made available to you both by email, a follow-up email, and also on our website. And so you will be able to access everything from this. And so again, feel free to share those. We're also working on kind of compiling all of the resources into kind of almost like a one-stop shop as a toolkit. So later in the summer, you will be receiving that as well, just kind of as one place where you can find all of it. So we are, again, just much gratitude to all of you for being on for the past few weeks and especially tonight. So I do want to ask, because we have our Deputy Director for North Carolina Black Alliance, Marcus Bass on. So Marcus, if you would like to share a few words on behalf of the Alliance, that would be great. But if not, we'll go ahead and close. So actually, it looks like Marcus has something.
He's muted. His mouth is going, but his words are not coming out.
Can you hear me now, Commissioner Perkins?
We can hear you. Yep, we can hear you.
I want to thank everybody, and I really particularly want to thank Reggie for this conversation and these series of sessions. I think for all of us, we know what it's like being outside of the process. And in so many different ways, if the system continues to operate with us outside of the process and only engaged in voting and voter registration alone, we won't get it done. And so the change that we've seen in being engaged in these sessions, understanding how we can leverage even little tools around drawing maps, or at the very least, knowing how to monitor the process. This is not just a legislative piece that is going to last in this 1 year, but we're going to be engaged through every form of this process as our county commissioners draw maps, as our school board and our city councils draw maps. And I want to make sure that everyone takes the information that we've learned and figured out what the next step is in your local area. So I'm excited about what's ahead, but I'm excited about what we've accomplished together. And so I want to thank you. And more specifically, I want to thank Reggie and the team at the Black Alliance to help make this possible. So thank you all again very much. And Reggie, I'll toss it back to you.
And I just wanted to jump in and say thank you, because this is so exciting to me, because it's good to know that there's somebody out there working to help us participate and make a change. And so I'm grateful for what you guys do.
We appreciate that, Mr. Jordan. And I guess I'll just kind of close that by just saying that, again, we've been doing this for close to a month now. I recognize some of the faces, like some of us are kind of the usual suspects who've been doing this redistricting work for years in this state. And so I know you all know that to get people on a call about redistricting is not always the easiest thing. This can be boring at times. This can be kind of wonky, but to see the commitment of community folks around this process has been encouraging, even for me. So thank you all for being here. And again, you will receive the resources. The timeline for this is going to be a little bit later than usual. We usually get it all out by Friday. Our Marcom team is, some of them are kind of taking some time off, so it'll be early next week, but we will get it to you as always. So thank you all. Have a good night.